channel, Joe's Learning Hub, a one-stop channel for teacher trainees. In my previous video, I told that in order to achieve positive washback effect, you must use various ways of testing language. That is what I am going to explain in this video, ways of testing English language. Before introducing the topic for today's lecture, let me first inform you the difference between language testing and subject testing. Since language is learnt across different dimensions and according to the needs of an individual, language learning broadens. Whereas in subject learning, knowledge elements are built upon each other. To test a language, proficiency or effective usage of the language must be done to diagnose the student's strengths and weaknesses, while in subject testing, subject knowledge is alone tested. Well, you must remember that to test the English language, you can use the following ways of testing. There are 9 ways to test the proficiency of the English language of a student. They are direct testing, indirect testing, discrete point testing, integrative testing, norm referenced testing, criterion reference testing, objective testing, subjective testing, and communicative testing. I shall explain each one in detail. The first one is direct testing. It means testing a particular skill, and it should not engage in testing other skills. When direct testing is concerned, testing has to be done only in one particular skill. Suppose a teacher wants to test the listening skill of the students, then the test should be in listening comprehension only, using listening tapes, etc. The students here are required to perform precisely the skill that which is to be tested by the teacher. The main advantage of direct testing is it will prepare the students to practice persistently for that particular skill. So, direct testing tests only one particular skill at a time. The second type of testing is indirect testing. In this testing, it measures a particular skill through some other skill. It is the incorporation of various skills that are connected with one another. For example, listening and speaking skills. If a teacher has to test the listening skill of the students, instead of using listening tapes, she can speak out or she can read out paragraphs from book. So this is indirect testing, measuring a particular skill through some other skill. This tests the students' abilities to operate all 4 skills and apply them in various situations. Hence, this is considered to be more effective than direct one, as it covers a broader part of the language. Also, it does not constrain the students to one particular skill. Indirect testing measures a particular skill through some other skill. Now, moving on to the third way of testing language, we have discrete testing. It means testing a particular language item. For example, tenses of grammar. This tests language components like vocabulary, pronunciation, grammar and spelling, and also the language skills like listening, speaking, reading and writing separately. Remember that in discrete testing, the language components are tested separately, as well the language skills are tested separately. The fourth type is integrative testing. This tests language skills and language components together or simultaneously. It tests the learner's display of knowledge of grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation together and not as separate components. You should remember that in integrative testing, it is the integration of testing of all the language skills and language components simultaneously. While in discrete testing, it is the testing of one particular language component or an item and one particular language skill. The following 2 tests, that is norm referenced test and criterion referenced test, Do not focus directly on the language items but focus on the scores the students can get. Let us see in detail. Norm referenced tests. These are nothing but proficiency and placement tests. Norm reference tests are standardized tests designed to compare and rank test takers in relation to one another. Here, the test reports whether they performed better or worse than a hypothetical average student. In other words, it can be said norm reference test measures the knowledge of the student and compares it with the knowledge of another student of his or her group. So in norm reference test, a comparison of students' performance takes place, and that too in percentiles. The student's score is compared with the scores of other students in percentile terms. This will help the teacher know the proportion of the students who have scored above and below the hypothetical average student. This test is designed to measure global language abilities like English language proficiency and have subtests like listening and reading comprehension and writing. These norm reference tests test the English language proficiency and they have subtests, and these tests are long and the content is diverse. The students will definitely know the format of the questions, but they do not know what the language content is to be tested. So this is the norm referenced test. Now moving on to criterion referenced test. These tests are achievement tests and diagnostic tests. These tests are designed to measure students' performance against a set of criteria or learning standards. It is connected with the learner's knowledge of the subject. The teachers are concerned with how much of the content the students know, how much percentage of questions have been answered correctly by the students. The teacher's main focus is on the student's performance and not on score distribution. Here, the students can predict both the question formats as well as the language content to be tested. So, in criterion referenced tests, the student's performance is tested and not the comparison of the students' scores. Now, moving on to the next one, that is objective testing. In objective testing, it tests the students objectively as the teacher tests the knowledge of the student on a particular topic. So, the teacher can give any number of objective type questions in objective testing. The next type of testing is subjective testing. It involves the personal judgment of the examiner. Teacher's impression and his or her knowledge of the student's abilities can influence assessing process. So, this is the subjective testing, and as English teachers, we are supposed to not include as much of subjective testing in our tests. And the last one is communicative testing. It tests the knowledge of grammar and how it could be applied in written and spoken language. The content in the test should be closer to the real life as possible so that the student would feel himself in the natural environment. In communicative testing, you should remember that whatever content is being given should be closer to the real life situation so that student can apply himself into that situation and he can communicate with the spoken or written language. It tests the student's ability to operate with the language they know and apply it in a given situation. Hence, communicative testing can be summed up as testing of student's ability to behave himself as he would do in everyday life. So, these are all the 9 ways of testing English language. So, my dear students, in order to test a student's language ability, you can use these above mentioned ways of testing, namely direct testing, indirect testing, discrete testing, integrative testing, norm reference testing, criterion reference testing, objective testing, subjective testing, and communicative testing. I hope this session would be helpful for conducting a test in English language based on the criterion you want to test. Until we meet again, thank you.